Thank you for inviting me to lead you in prayer. It's an honor as we reflect and pray for peace in our hearts and in beautiful Colorado. Violence is a fact of life, and the accident varies, but not the sin. We find hatred in so many instances. When, for instance, a person is attacked for no reason except for a cause that sets him fire at the point, there is an explosion in the person. There's always a reason, and we have to begin by the face of continuing up to provocative and indecisive cause pain and suffering to all those who are not different. Most of the viewers see the same scene over and over again. We know the scene, but rather than
The Senate will come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Senators Baisley, Bridges, Buckner, Coleman, Cutter, Danielson, Exum, Fields, Gardner. Janal. Gonzalez. Hanson. Hinrichsen. Hawkes Lewis. Kirkmeyer. Kolker. Liston. Lundeen. Lundeen. Marchman. Moreno. Mullica. Pelton B. Pelton R. Pelton
Excused.
R.
Excused.
Priola. Rich. Roberts. Rodriguez. Simpson. Sullivan. Smallwood. Smallwood.
Excused.
Van Winkle. Van Winkle. Will. Winter. Winter.
Winter.
Winter.
Winter.
Zenzinger. Smallwood. Mr. President.
Here. Good morning. Roll call is 34 present, 0 absent, 1 excused. We do have a quorum. Will the good senator from Denver of the Gonzalez variety please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Buenos dias, colleagues. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance.
Approval of the journal. Senator Marchman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate Journal of Friday, April 14th be approved as corrected by the Secretary.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and that motion is adopted. Senate Services.
April 17, 2023, correctly printed. Senate Bill 282, 283, and 284, correctly engrossed. Senate Bill 66, 111, 153, 184, 192, 199, 212, 254, 255, 256, 258, 268, 272, and 273, correctly re-engrossed. Senate Bill 5, 13, 16, 29, 31, 54, 65, 166, 167, 179, 205, and 206, correctly revised. House Bill 1196, House Concurrent Resolution 1002, correctly re-revised. House Bill 1009.
Conference Committee reports.
First report of the Second Conference Committee on House Bill 1101 to the President of the Senate and Speaker of the House of Representatives. Your Second Conference Committee appointed on House Bill 1101 concerning support for transit and in connection therewith, increasing the flexibility of the Ozone Season Transit Grant Program and increasing opportunities for transit agency participation in regional transportation planning has met and reports that it has agreed upon the following: that the House accede to the Senate amendments made to the bill as the amendments appear in the re-revised bill with the following changes. Respectfully submitted House Committee Representatives Bacon, Chair, Vigil, and Catlin. Senate Committee Senators Winter F. Chair, Hinrichsen, and Kirkmeyer.
Message from the House.
April 17, 2023, Mr. President, the House has passed on third reading and transmitted to the Reviser of Statutes House Bills 1279, 1197, 1228, 1241, 1244, 1287, 1041, 1091, 1212, 1158, 1161, and 1201, amended as printed in House Journal April 14, 2023. The House has passed on third reading and transmitted to the Reviser of Statutes Senate Bill 232, amended as printed in House Journal April 14, 2023.
Message from the Reviser.
April 17, 2023, we herewith transmit without comment as amended. House Bill 1279, 1197, 1228, 1241, 1244, 1287, 1041, 1091, 1212, 1158, 1161, 1201 without comment as amended. Senate Bill 232.
Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate proceed out of order for a moment of personal privilege by myself and the Minority Leader.
The motion is for the Senate to proceed out of order for purposes of moments of personal privilege. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Senate will proceed out of order.
No. Well, I kind of.
Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, if you want to feel free to join us, we will be acknowledging and honoring our legislative aides this morning. And so wanted to just read the tribute that we had prepared for our aides. The tribute reads, the Senate of the Colorado Legislature convened in the first regular session of the 74th General Assembly hereby extends our most sincere gratitude and appreciation to all of the legislative aides serving in the 2023 legislative session. In honor of all your hard work as legislative aides, to our state senators and the efforts that you have made to support the state of Colorado in this legislative session. Your accomplishments will have a lasting impact beyond the walls of this building and stretch into every corner of the state of Colorado. Your work helps make all that happens at the Capitol possible, and for that, we thank you deeply. Before I was a member of the state legislature, I also was a legislative aide, and so I really hope that we will see some of you sitting in these seats here soon.
Minority Leader Lundin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. On behalf of my colleagues united here in the well and beyond, I add my voice to the appreciation we all share for our aides, the folks who work with us, who sometimes make us smarter, sometimes make us to the meeting on time, sometimes get all the things done that we can't seem to get done ourselves. We are grateful for you. The Aide Corps has been kind of a changing, evolving organization, if you will, or disorganization, or gathering of individuals. And it has been interesting to see how it changes. But one thing remains consistent: the desire of the aides to serve and work well for the electeds whom they serve, because they, too, serve the people of Colorado. Thank you to all of the aides that serve all of us. On behalf of my colleagues standing here united, we are grateful. Thank you, Mr. President.
Not sure. Thank you so much, members, and thank you to all of the legislative aides that help this building work every single day. Especially thank you to my aide, Lena, and all of the conversations you have fielded about mushrooms that you never expected to learn about this year. But in all seriousness, thank you to the Legislative Aid Corps for all the great work that you've done all session, and I know you will continue to do over the next couple of weeks. The Senate will stand in a brief recess to, I guess, greet our aides and to provide the tributes that we have for them.
like himself and then everybody else.
I hereby present to you the Senate of the Colorado Legislature. Yeah, celebrating. Thank you very much. You are your the best. Grace. Spirit. For you.
And all of them, right? Like every time we see any of them around it, they're uplifting and helpful and help each other out, and I think appreciate.
Yeah, except for Aaron. Let me tell you. They're always so helpful and thoughtful and on the ball. Thanks, y'all. Y'all crush it. Fight to good fight. What is the thing from Gretzky? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I like that.
Very grateful for y'all.
You gotta do a selfie. Where's Papa? Come on, you gotta stand up. Come on, you gotta get the joint. You know, you gotta get the joint. Get a certificate. You know what I'm saying? All right, on three. 1, 2, 3, cheese. 1, 2, 3, cheese. There we go.
I don't have my hands.
I got one.
Here, now I'll do one. I'll do one for okay. Smile. I'm sorry, I was actually I love it. I appreciate you.
Yo, can I holler at you? Can I holler at you right quick? You ain't got to move nothing. Just holler real quick. I mean, you got to move not your stuff, though. don't tell them I can't be there tomorrow. They gonna show up. They gonna have a conversation even without me. I'm just here to organize. I could ask. I'll do that.
The Senate will come back to order. Third reading of bills, consent calendar. Will the clerk please read the titles of all the bills on the consent calendar?
Senate Bill 66, Senators Simpson and Hansen, Representatives Byrd and Lynch, concerning changes to the Advanced Industry Acceleration Programs. Senate Bill 192, Senators Priola and Roberts, Representatives Kipp and McLaughlin, concerning the continuation of the Pesticide Applicators Act and in connection therewith implementing recommendations contained in the 2022 Sunset Report by the Department of Regulatory Agencies regarding the act and making an appropriation. Senate Bill 199, Senators Hinrichsen and Van Winkle, Representatives Lindstedt and Weinberg, concerning procedures for the issuance of marijuana licenses and in connection therewith clarifying that the state licensing authority may refund licensing fees when an application is denied and allowing applicants the opportunity to renew a state license while local jurisdiction approval is pending.
Members, we are on thirds. Let's keep it down a little bit. Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the passage of all the bills on the third reading consent calendar, which includes Senate Bills 66, 192, and 199.
Is there any discussion on any of the bills? Seeing none, the motion is the passage of all of the bills in the third reading of bills consent calendar. Are there any no votes? Senator Van Winkle.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request to be recorded as a no vote on Senate Bill 66 and 192.
Senator Van Winkle will be recorded as a no vote on Senate Bill 66 and Senate Bill 192. Senator Baisley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to be recorded as a no vote on Senate Bill 66 and Senate Bill 192.
Senator Baisley will be recorded as a no vote on Senate Bills 66 and 192.
Thank you, Mr. President.
With a vote of 32 ayes, 2 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Bill 66 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Priola, Bridges, Zenzinger, Winter, Exum, Janal, with a vote of 32 ayes, 2 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Bill 192 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Marchman, Cutter, Jaquez Lewis, with a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Bill 199 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Gonzalez, third reading of bills. Final passage. Will the clerk please read the title of Senate Bill 153?
Senate Bill 153, Senators Rodriguez and Rich, Representatives Duran and Pugliese, concerning the continuation of the regulation of notaries by the Secretary of State and the Department of State and in connection therewith implementing the recommendations in the 2022 Sunset Report by the Department of Regulatory Agencies and making an appropriation.
Senator Rich.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 23-153 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the passage of Senate Bill 153. Are there any no votes? Senators Baisley, Minority Leader Lundin, with a vote of 32 ayes, 2 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Bill 153 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Gardner, will the clerk please read the title to, please add Senator Gonzalez to the most important bill of the session, Senate Bill 153.
I'll move well, you move 255, I'll do 256.
Okay, your names first. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 255?
Senate Bill 255, Senators Robertson, Will, Representatives McCluskey and Catlin, concerning the provision of compensation to people who suffer damages because of gray wolf depredation and in connection therewith, making and reducing appropriations.
Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the passage of Senate Bill 255 on third reading.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the passage of Senate Bill 255. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Bill 255 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Priola, Bridges, Zenzinger, Mullica, Janal, Van Winkle, will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 256?
Senate Bill 256, Senators Will and Roberts, Representatives Lukens and Soper, concerning prerequisites to the management of gray wolves prior to the wolves being reintroduced.
Senator Will.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of Senate Bill 256 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to thank the good senator from Newcastle and the good senator from Avon. I just really wasn't that sure on how I should vote on this bill. I didn't get enough emails on it, so I just really appreciate you giving us the information that we need so we can make a good, solid vote. Thank you so very much.
You're welcome. Senator Kirkmeyer, I will forward all the emails I got just to make sure you've got all the information. Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. President. And members, first, I need to move that my name be removed from Senate Bill 256.
As a co-sponsor?
Yes, as a co-sponsor.
Senator Priola's name will be removed as a co-sponsor from Senate Bill 256, and we may have to do that formally after the vote occurs.
Members, you saw a lot of emails on this bill, but we were in committee and heard this in Ag. There was a lot of concern brought up about how the bill will delay the implementation of what the voters passed. And first of all, I want to back up and say both of the sponsors, I firmly believe, are running this bill in good faith to address concerns of their constituents and their districts, in their district. That concern, though, is that they want to, and I think the testimony even said tap the brakes, they want to tap the brakes on the introduction of wolves into our state. And even with the amendments, and part of the reason I'm coming down here and speaking on thirds is I was busy working on other stuff during seconds, but if you look at Section 3 of the bill now, even with the amendments, it still, in my opinion, allows for delay in implementation of what the voters asked for, what there's money set aside to compensate ranchers for, and I don't want to go into the details, but there's nothing prohibiting someone from defending themselves if introduced wolf attacks them. I simply ask for a no vote on 256, and I won't go into the science on the benefits of wolves to our ecology, but it is well documented. And I've followed this issue for many years. As a young boy, I remember they had a lot of local coverage of what was going on in Yellowstone, because back then there was the first introduction into Yellowstone. So I think the passage of this bill is not good in many areas, but then again, I still want to compliment both sponsors as they are running legislation to benefit their districts. But with that, I will still be a polite no.
Senator Pelton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to come up and I rise in support of this bill. You guys heard me last week talk about how important that this bill is to the cattle industry, how important it is to agriculture in the state of Colorado, and how we need to make sure we're not criminalizing our producers for being able to protect their livestock. The 10J waiver, or the 10J rule, is very important for agriculture. It's very important for the introduction of wolves to make sure to have that. And I have to tell you is that, yes, these wolves are going to be introduced in the good senator from Avon and the good senator from Newcastle's district, but they're going to be in our districts. Eventually, they're going to be there, and we need to be able to protect our livestock. And someone who represents the #1 agriculture producing county in the state of Colorado is Weld County, and I want to make sure that this 10J waiver is in place so that we can protect our livestock and not criminalize our livestock producers for protecting their livelihood and protecting their herd. Thank you. I ask for an aye vote.
Senator Cutter.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I also want to rise in opposition to this bill, but I do want to compliment the sponsors. I know they worked really hard, and I totally understand you're doing this in response to your district. But every DNR is opposed to this bill. Every environmental group except one is actively opposed to this bill, and they've been much more involved in this process of reintroduction than I have, and so I've been reading up and taking their lead. And also, my district is wildly opposed to this bill, so for those reasons, I'll be a no today. And I urge you to consider a no as well.
Senator Bridges.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, colleagues, when I was in college, I wrote a paper on non-use value, specifically looking at the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge and looking at what is the marginal price of gasoline, what is the increase that people would be willing to pay to know that this place that they will never visit and maybe only ever see pictures of, to know that it remains pristine and safe. And for the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, when you average that around the entire country, it's pretty clear that the marginal impact that drilling there would have on gasoline prices really is not worth destroying one of the most pristine, most beautiful places on the planet. There's a lot of people in my district that care a lot about wolves. There is a non-use value for them. They will never see these wolves in the wild. They will only know that these wolves exist here in Colorado. And they care deeply about making sure that those are introduced into Colorado, and I would wager that they care deeply about making sure they're introduced in a responsible way. Originally, as introduced, this bill could have potentially delayed that introduction by years, but as amended by the sponsors, the most that this bill will delay that introduction is months. And there's another consideration that we have to have, and that is the consideration of the impact that this introduction will have on the people who will see these wolves, who will lose livestock to these wolves, whose lives will be directly impacted by that introduction. And I would say that trading a few months in order to make sure that we are complying with good policy for both people and wolves on this is absolutely worth the trade-off. And if we get to this point in the session next year where the 10J still looks like it is maybe a year out, which, by the way, the feds have said that they'll probably be done by mid-December, which wouldn't delay introduction at all. But if we get to this point next year, and we're still waiting to see what the feds are going to do, because, you know, federal government can sometimes be slow, then we can revisit that question then. next year. But this year, for now, for today, for the people whose lives will be impacted, and for the wolves, we should vote yes on this bill.
Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank my colleagues for all their comments on both sides of this. And thank you to the good senator from Greenwood Village who laid out the process very accurately about what we're talking about. But I just want to add a few more details because there's been an incredible amount of disinformation being spread about what this bill is and is not. First, I need to begin by saying the legislature making modifications or helping with the implementation of ballot measures is normal, and it is our role, especially statutory ballot measures. We've done it with marijuana probably every single session since Amendment 64 was passed in 2012. We're doing it this session on paid family leave. It is our role to make sure these ballot measures, as voted on by the people, are implemented correctly. That's what this bill is about. The reintroduction deadline of wolves is not in statute anywhere listed as December 31st, 2023. It's not. That is not what was appeared on people's ballots in 2020, and it is not in statute anywhere that wolves have to be on the ground by December 31st, 2023. That is a decision made by CPW. It says we need to begin the process of reintroduction, and thanks to the amazing work of CPW, the Strategic Action Working Group, and the Stakeholder Advisory Committee that has been working for years on this, that process has begun. We have satisfied the terms of the ballot measure already. This bill is about ensuring that we have a 10J rule in place before reintroduction happens. A 10J rule is best management practice for endangered species. The wolves are listed as endangered, and we would be the only state in the nation ever to do this without a 10J if we introduce wolves prior to receiving that rule from the federal government. It's best for the species, it's best for the CPW officers who have to manage these wolves, and it's best for the ranchers, farmers, and Coloradans that will have to deal with the impact of them on the ground. This bill has support from a broad array of interests: sportsmen, agriculture industry, Conservation Colorado. They understand that the wolves have benefit to our landscape and to our environment, but we have to do it correctly. CPW has wisely already been pursuing a 10J. We hope and believe that we will get it prior to their imposed reintroduction of December 31st, 2023. But what this bill says is that if that, for whatever reason, that doesn't happen, CPW has the flexibility to ensure that we get the 10J and make the process work well prior to reintroduction. It gives them the legal flexibility to do this right by the Coloradans who have to live with wolf reintroduction. We should honor the process, the very long process that has gone in implementing Proposition 114. This bill helps the department do that. We get to honor the intent of Coloradans to do this the right way, and we get to show rural Colorado, my constituents, Senator Will's constituents, many more people in here, as the good senator from Sterling noted, who will be impacted by this in future years, give them the tools that they need to deal with the impacts of wolf reintroduction. And this is how we make the ballot measure work and be successful. We all want this to be successful. Let's show some good faith and pass this bill so that we can make sure the ballot measure is successful.
Senator Will.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I thank my colleague for such a great talk about what this bill is about and this 10J. And he mentioned it's just an insurance policy. You know, hopefully we're going to have 10J. Everyone involved in this process understands that 10J is necessary. It's just a management tool. And if you think that just because we have 10J that anyone can go out there and indiscriminately shoot wolves, that's not the case, okay? And I think he did mention too that, you know, when this ballot measure went through, that they weren't an endangered species. So some things have changed. I can tell you I'm a wildlife advocate. I've told you up here in this well before, I advocate for wildlife. I spent my entire career advocating for wildlife. You know, it was in front of the Wildlife Commission 2 different times for the reintroduction of wolves. The wildlife professionals turned it down twice, right? So then we end up with a ballot, Proposition 114. I can tell you, standing here as a wildlife professional myself, ballot box biology is absolutely the worst way to manage your wildlife resource in the state of Colorado. But We did it. The voters passed it. We heard it. This is no delay tactic. This bill is not any kind of a delay tactic or anything else. It's just about having the management tools needed for a successful reintroduction of wolves in the state of Colorado. So I please vote yes on this bill. We need it. The wolves need it. Our landowners, our livestock producers, everyone in the state of Colorado needs this 10J. Hopefully it gets done. This is just an insurance policy waiting on the feds. Thank you.
The motion is the passage of Senate Bill 256. Are there any no votes? Senators Winter, Jaquez Lewis, Coleman, Priola, Cutter. Please have the president. With a vote of 28 ayes, 6 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Bill 256 is passed. Co-sponsors: Senators Mullica, Janal, Van Winkle, Baisley, Smallwood, Kirkmeyer, Liston, Minority Leader Lundin, Gardner. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 258?
Senate Bill 258, Senators Buckner and Lundin, Representative Michelson Janae, concerning consolidating duties under the authorization process for Colorado educator preparation programs from the Department of Higher Education to the Department of Education and in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Senator Lundin.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 23258 and ask for permission to make a technical amendment, third reading amendment.
Will you please explain the need for such an action, Mr. Minority Leader?
Absolutely. The legal eagles downstairs, above us, around us, everywhere you can imagine, caught something that is a conforming process between this bill and another bill that's passed in the House. House Bill 1001, which intersects in some ways with this bill, removed language. This bill mistakenly amends that removed language. We simply need to strike that section and take out language that can't be amended because it no longer exists in statute. That's what the amendment would do should you choose to pass it.
Question before the body is Senator Lundin's request for permission to offer a third reading amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? Yeah, I tend to agree with you, but the ayes have it and permission is granted. Will the clerk please read L005 to Senate Bill 258?
Amendment L005 by Senator Buckner and Lundin.
Senator
amending
Lundin.
House Bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I move Amendment L005 to Senate Bill 258 and ask that it be read at length. No.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the adoption of L005 to Senate Bill 258. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, L005 is adopted. To the bill. Senator Buckner.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is an excellent bill that is going to ensure that we are consolidating duties under the authorization process for Colorado educator preparation programs from the Department of Higher Ed to the Department of Education. And this is a great bill. We had great testimony in committee, and I'm asking for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the passage of Senate Bill 258. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Bill 258 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senators Rich, Priola, Fields, Winter, Cutter, Exum. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 272?
Senate Bill 272, Senator Moreno, Representative McCluskey, concerning a joint legislative committee meeting about a disaster emergency declaration by the governor.
Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 272 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I just wanted to call out to the body that we did some work on this bill late in the process and amended it. The bill interacts with the legislature's ability to engage with the governor in cases of executive emergency or emergency. It gives the voice of the people entree into the conversation. The language we put on the bill said not only can the voice of the people broadly be heard, but the voice of the minority will have meaningful purchase in the conversation as well, and I rise in support of Senate Bill 272. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the passage of Senate Bill 272. Are there any no votes? Senators Van Winkle. With a vote of 33 ayes, 1 no, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Bill 272 is passed. Co-sponsors. Please add the president. Will the clerk please read the title to House Concurrent Resolution 1002?
House Concurrent Resolution 1002, Representative Marshall, Senators Fields and Will, submitting to the registered electors of the state of Colorado an amendment to the Colorado Constitution concerning the expansion of eligibility for the property tax exemption for veterans with a disability to include a veteran who does not have a service-connected disability rated as a 100% permanent disability but does have individual unemployability status.
Senator Will.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of House Concurrent Resolution 23-1002 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the adoption of House Concurrent Resolution 1002. This does require 24 votes for passage. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 1 excused, House Concurrent Resolution 1002 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Priola, Baisley, Simpson, Van Winkle, Roberts, Smallwood, Minority Leader Lundeen, Gardner, Liston, Pelton B, Cutter, Winter, Buckner, Danielson, Bridges, Sullivan. Senator Priola.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor to Senate Bill 272.
Senator Priola will be added as a co-sponsor to Senate Bill 272. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 212?
Senate Bill 212, Senator Danielson, Representatives Parenti, McCormick, concerning the creation of a CB's license plate to honor the CB's tradition and in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Senator Danielson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 212 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? I think you discussed everything you possibly could discuss about this bill last week. Seeing no further discussion, the motion is the passage of Senate Bill 212. Are there any no votes? Senators Rich, Liston, with a vote of 32 ayes, 2 no, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Bill 212 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Kolker, Gardner, Pelton B, Sullivan, Priola, Bridges, Marchman, Buckner, Cutter, Winter. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1196?
House Bill 1196, Representative Leader Senator Sullivan concerning clarifying that workers' compensation is not the exclusive remedy for persons aggrieved by violation of the Colorado Youth Employment Opportunity Act of 1971.
Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1196 on third and final reading.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the passage of House Bill 1196. Are there any no votes? Senators Van Winkle, Will, Simpson, Baisley, Rich, Pelton B., Liston, Gardner, Kirkmeyer, Smallwood, Minority Leader Lundin. With a vote of 23 ayes, 11 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1196 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Winter, Jaquez Lewis, Colker, Janal, Cutter, Majority Leader Moreno, Buckner, Mullica, will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 184?
Senate Bill 184, Senators Winter F. and Exum, Representatives Froelich and Garcia, concerning protections for residential tenants and in connection therewith prohibiting a landlord from considering certain information relating to a prospective tenant's income or rental history, establishing a maximum amount that a landlord can require as a security deposit, and allowing a tenant to assert as an affirmative defense in an eviction proceeding that a landlord violated anti-discriminatory housing laws.
Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for third reading and final passage, Senate Bill 184.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the passage of Senate Bill 184. Are there any no votes? Senators Van Winkle, Will, Baisley, Rich, Gardner, Minority Leader Lundin, Smallwood, Kirkmeyer, Liston, Pelton B., Simpson, Janal, with a vote of 22 ayes, 12 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Bill 184 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Jaquez Lewis, Majority Leader Moreno, Cutter, will the clerk please add Senator Gonzalez as a co-sponsor on 184? Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 268?
Senate Bill 268, Senators Mullica and Kirkmeyer, Representatives Byrd and Bockenfeld, concerning the provision of information regarding the 10-year transportation plan.
Senator Mullica.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 268 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the passage of Senate Bill 268. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Bill 268 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Winter, Majority Leader Moreno, Roberts, Pelton B., Simpson, Liston, Hansen, Priola. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 254?
Senate Bill 254, Senators Fields and Gonzalez, Representatives Epps and Weisman, concerning entry into a dwelling by a peace officer.
Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. President. We move Senate Bill 254 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Senator Fields.
Yes. Mr. President, I'd like to request permission to offer a third reading amendment.
Senator Fields, can you explain the need for this third reading amendment? Or Senator Gonzalez, can you explain?
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this amendment is a technical amendment to insert the word "for." Just for readability purposes, this is a purely technical amendment, and I ask for that third reading permission to allow this bill to be readable by all. Thank you.
Motion is to allow Senator Fields to offer a third reading amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and permission is granted. There is an amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please read L009?
Amendment L009
Senator
by
Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, we move Amendment L009 on third read, and ask for an aye vote.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the passage of L009 to Senate Bill 254. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, L009 to Senate Bill 254 is adopted. To the bill. Is there any discussion? Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank the sponsors for their work on this bill. It has, I think it's fair to say that for the senator from Aurora, in particular, this has been a long road. I was a no in committee because there was still a bit of work to be done. That was done on second reading, and I appreciate that so much. This is a bill that deals with the intersection between personal privacy and public safety, which we do a lot here. I don't know if people think about that very much when we do that, but finding the right balance is not easy, and the sponsors have done that. So I'm pleased to be an aye vote here on third reading and final passage. Thank you, Mr. Chair, or Mr. President.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Will.
Thank you, Mr. President. I apologize I didn't get up here on second reading to talk about this bill, but what I do want to say is thanks to the sponsors for working on this, and I understand a lot of it, where the bill's headed and what you're trying to address with this particular bill. I have to say, and I don't know how many other in this room have worn a badge and executed search warrants. I have. I've done that in my career many, many times. And I can tell you on the, and all of ours were knock warrants, but I can tell you when you knock on a door at one of those residents, their first priority of those residents is not to answer the door. So I view this totally from an officer safety standpoint. And if any of you have wore a badge and served a warrant, I will tell you that you get pretty amped up. And obviously, there's an element of surprise, and I like in the bill where the judge can grant that. So, you know, from the 7 to 7 or whatever, because you always serve them early in the morning to try to catch people off guard, right? And so if a judge can grant that if it's really bad individuals and you really need that element of surprise to grant an earlier time on the warrant. So I appreciate that. I looked this bill over, excuse me, really closely, but I will be a no vote, and my no vote is reflected that I think it's an officer safety issue, so I'll be a no vote. Thank you.
Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. President. And members, I am encouraging to vote yes on Senate Bill 254. And it is designed with the purpose of officer and law enforcement safety. I've had extensive conversations with law enforcement, with DAs, with prosecutors, with advocates, and we want to make sure that if you are going to execute a search warrant, that we want to keep everyone safe. We want to keep that resident safe, and we want to keep that law enforcement safe. And so the merits of the bill is simply to establish limitations and requirements for warrants that are executed by law enforcement officer. Let me share with you how simple the bill is. You have to have on a uniform. And when you're in uniform, you need to have your badge on. You need to have your body camera equipment on and activated. It also limits when you can execute a search warrant, daylight time. This is not radical legislation. This is something that is happening across the nation. There's about 8 states that already have this type of legislation, and many cities have already adopted no-knock raids. They have limited, they have banned them. So you have to have your body camera on, you have to be in uniform, we have time limits, and then there's also exceptions when you might need to get into a facility because of an emergency, a hostage situation, murder, school shooting, or those kinds of things, where you can bypass these limitations if it's extreme risk and danger. So that's in there as well. And then the very last thing that it does, of course, is that, I can't think of the last thing for some reason. It's just so simple that I can't remember what it does, because basically what we're trying to do here is to keep people from being startled in the middle of the night when a warrant is executed. Oh, here's the last thing. You have to announce. So critical. You just can't ram through somebody's door and not announce. Law enforcement has to announce that they're at the door, giving people enough time to get to the door, to avoid someone being startled and alert and not knowing what's happening. So when you think about the timeline and you think about the ability to announce, and all the other things that are in place, you're in the uniform, it takes away that element of surprise. So I'm hoping that I have your support and your yes vote in Senate Bill 254, which has been heavily stakeholders meetings with all different kinds of folks to make sure that we got this policy right for the people and law enforcement in the state of Colorado. So I'm urging an aye vote on Senate Bill 254.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to extend my gratitude to everyone who has weighed in and offered their comments and feedback and suggestions in regards to this policy. This is a policy that the good senator from Aurora has worked on, not for weeks, not for months, but for years, to ensure that the community understands how this policy will be implemented in their communities, and that law enforcement has clarity as well. What we heard in committee was a disconnect between the fear in community that they may be the next Breonna Taylor and the testimony from law enforcement officials that said this is an extraordinarily rare tactic that we utilize in the first place. And so being able to marry those two very disparate realities through this policy is something that the good senator from Aurora has strove to do, and I am grateful for her leadership on this policy. Colleagues, I ask for an aye vote on this bill. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion is the passage of Senate Bill 254. Are there any no votes? Senators Will, Van Winkle, Baisley, Rich, Minority Leader Lundin, Smallwood, Kirkmeyer. With a vote of 27 ayes, 7 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Bill 254 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Sullivan, Majority Leader Moreno, Hansen, Exum, Rodriguez, Marchman, Cutter, Winter, Buckner, Jaquez Lewis. Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 273 lay over to the end of the calendar.
Motion is to lay over Senate Bill 273 until the end of the calendar. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 273 will lay over to the bottom of the calendar. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 111?
Senate Bill 111, Senator Rodriguez, Representative Woodrow, concerning public employees' workplace protection from employer retaliation and in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 23-111 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Senator Pelton.
I want to thank the good senator from, thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank the good senator from Denver for bringing this again. And I know you guys have all heard all of us talk about how bad this bill is, but I want to just read to you from CML. We all got these on our desks, but I want to make sure to read this. Why you should vote no. Colorado's municipalities have great respect for the dignity and well-being of their staff who deliver important services to the community. Cities and towns have used their existing powers to engage in collective bargaining and create other employees' protections without the need for heavy-handed state interference. At the same time, municipalities have legitimate needs to manage their workforce to ensure efficient and effective services without disruptions. This bill demonizes local governments and ignores legal structures that ensure the rights of the employees. Municipal employees are already entitled to substantial protections under the federal and state constitution and laws. This bill doesn't meaningfully enhance those protections and confuses the rights of both employees and employers as to these laws. The bill goes outside of traditional and appropriate forms of workplace remedies by allowing employees to broadcast grievances to the governing body and beyond without limitations. This bill unconstitutionally infers with the authority of home rule municipalities. Under Article 20, Section 6 of the Colorado Constitution relating to municipal governments and the regulation of municipal personnel. The bill disrupts local choices regarding collective bargaining employees regulation. The bill conflicts with local laws that prohibit elected officials from interfering with employment matters. This bill brings the state into the local disciplinary process and career services protections. It also increases the burden on CDLE. I ask for a no vote on this bill. I will also tell you that last year's collective bargaining bill, when we did this, we omitted 23 counties, I think it was, and this bill brings those 23 counties back into that. So I thank you and ask for an aye vote, or ask for a no vote. Ask for a no vote. Yeah.
Senator Zenzinger.
So I'm going to ask for a no vote up front so that I don't mix up my words. Members, we had a really long debate about this. Unfortunately, the amendments that I offered up regarding the perspective that was just mentioned by the good senator from the Eastern Plains regarding the role of home rule cities were not taken up, and for those reasons I won't be able to support today. Colorado does have a long-standing constitutional provision regarding home rule and local control. And the creation in terms, this is quote from our Constitution, the creation in terms of municipal officers, agencies, and employments, the definition, regulation, and alteration of the powers, duties, qualifications, and terms, or tenure of all municipal officers, agents, and employees, end quote, are expressly covered in the Constitution as being under the purview of the municipality. For those reasons, I requested an amendment that would have addressed that. Municipalities elect their officials in a nonpartisan capacity. The decisions to be made by a municipal employee, such as licensing, planning, development, police work, should not be biased in any way, and citizens of the municipality should be able to trust that those with the decision-making power are not outspoken in ways that may be against whatever the individuals are attempting to have approved. Recently, there were 2 police officers in Boston who were fired from their jobs for participating in anti-vax protests and the January 6th incident. Both free speech and political involvement swings both ways. Municipalities should be able to ensure that their citizens are comfortable in the potential interactions with law enforcement, whether it be because of health and safety or a bias of some sort. Further, there are multiple Supreme Court cases indicating why public employees have limited rights with respect to speech, specifically for home rule cities. It's for the exact reasons that I've just listed above, and I believe that employees in public employment have free speech rights, but they are purposefully limited due to the nature of their employment. I'm sorry that we couldn't get to a place where we could be in agreement on this one specific aspect of the bill. There are other elements of the bill that I do support, that I do think are necessary, that would be very helpful. But when it comes to the role of municipal government and the protections that are guaranteed under the Constitution, I will have to be a no vote today.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, we had a good discussion of this bill on second reading, but often I think I might be speaking to an empty room. So just so you know and understand what you are doing here, let me briefly address this. This bill applies broadly to almost every public employee in the state of Colorado, including police officers, firefighters, corrections officers, and those in confidential relationships, those who are like the clerk to your town council, the clerk to your board, the executive secretary to the director of an agency. Those people have duties of confidentiality, and yet this bill purports to give them a complete right of free speech. Now, as I recounted and reviewed for you on Friday, this bill seeks to grant rights that these employees already have, and they have them guaranteed by the United States Supreme Court. And I have to tell you, no matter what the makeup of the United States Supreme Court is today, this is long held precedent. It's precedent that is widely ascribed to by judges. It's not going to go away. And what are those rights? The rights already exist for public employees to speak out on matters of public concern, to participate in the political process just as any other citizen may, and to belong to an employee organization just as they can belong to any other association. The First Amendment, along with the 14th Amendment, protects the right of all citizens to speak and associate. And constitutional law already provides remedies for these rights for Colorado's employees. So what this would do, though, is inject a new mechanism and arguably, as I read the bill some more over the weekend, arguably cut off those rights, or the right to pursue those remedies at 6 months, something that doesn't exist now. The bill also really needed, as I offered, unsuccessfully to my surprise, a management rights clause, which is typical in labor statutes like these, referencing employer-employee relationships in the public sector. Public employees with public missions, whether it's police officer, firefighter, public health nurse, snowplow driver,
or clerk to the County Board of Commissioners, they have public responsibilities. And they're required to execute those to the highest degree possible. That's why maintaining balance between management and employee relations is important. And that's why I asked for a management rights clause. I had it drafted, moved it, and asked for your consideration, and it was summarily rejected. Public employees are not employed, well, it may be used in the vernacular. When someone says, well, I'm employed by the city of Colorado Springs or the city and county of Denver or Ouray County or some special district, really, those employees are employees of the people. And when we talk about management rights, we're talking about those that are responsible to the people, and many times elected officials or those appointed by elected officials. We wanted to pair this with a management rights clause to restore some balance, as has been done around the country when bills like this have been introduced. And it's very disappointing to me that that was summarily rejected without, it seems to me, without a lot of consideration about what the balance here ought to be. The other issue is that whenever we attempt to define in statute what has already been defined by the courts with extensive court decisions and legal precedent, when an action is brought under this, the tendency for courts is to say, well, there must be something different than we'd already done. We didn't say in this bill we're embracing the current law with respect to First Amendment rights of public employees. So there must be, in Colorado, extending some greater right. And yet, the United States Supreme Court entered into a careful balancing exercise. And again, just so you're clear, long before, for those of you who may have concern about what I believe to be a great makeup of the court, but others do not, and I understand, this precedent arises from a court that was far more dominated by appointees of Democrat administrations than Republican administrations. The balancing test of the United States Supreme Court for First Amendment rights of public employees about matters of public concern versus personal concern, matters of workplace safety and workplace concerns, which employees can speak about, have been considered very carefully. Unlike, to be quite honest with you, in my view, this bill. I asked for a no vote.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. The debate on this policy has been real fascinating. We heard this bill in local government, and when I received the initial opposition fact sheet from CCI, CML, and SDA, Special Districts Association, the first part of their, the first bullet point on their fact sheet said, no specific evidence of pervasive improper public employer retaliation that cannot be handled. Which begged the question for me, what is an example of proper employee retaliation? I asked that in the hearing. The fact sheet was subsequently amended to take that language out. Because at the end of the day, There should be no such thing as proper employee retaliation. Senate Bill 111 is real clear on that point, and for that reason, I ask for an aye vote.
Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, colleagues, for your testimony and the testimony and the debate we had on Friday. A few things I just want to clarify on statements, which I appreciate all my colleagues' words. This bill, in it says there is no collective bargaining. So the bill that was last year that carved out 23 counties, fine. There are still, under this bill, no collective bargaining. There is no right to strike than what's already prevailed in the law for snowplow companies and other stuff, because that stuff's already in statute and has to be approved, and this bill does not change any strike statutes or anything that's already currently allowed under law. This bill, and then as far as First Amendment rights, like I've said before, that's a federal court, federal trial, expensive, long-term. This just provides a speedier process to discern whether something's been violated through the Department of Labor. It is not transformative. This happens in many states across the country. This simple policy just means that you can't threaten or retaliate against your workers if they have an issue at the workplace. That's all this bill does. We've had discussions 35-0 with discussions about non-disclosure. We've had discussions, and all this is about transparency and First Amendment rights to talk about workplace issues without being threatened or retaliated against. All this does is provide that simple thing. The discussions we had about January 6th, well, that was illegal. That was an overthrowing of the government. That's illegal, not protected activity. So that's a different statute than somebody complaining about something that's happening at their workplace, whether it's safety or issues with management or mistreating employees or harassing, that they can't go and tell anybody that something happening at the workplace. So I don't know why everybody thinks this is not the discussion we had last year. This is a simple protection for workers that we already, I've stated before, have in the private sector for workers to talk about workplace issues. If you feel that you need to protect your government's ability to threaten and manipulate your employees so they can't come out and exercise speech, then this isn't the bill for you. But if you believe in their rights, then please vote yes.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I have two bites at the apple. Members, I don't know what might have been said in someone's fact sheet, but let's make it clear. Retaliation by your public employer for exercising your First Amendment rights is already protected. In fact, this bill at what will become 2932-104 says a public employee has the right to. So don't be confused that you're suddenly extending rights to employees that they don't already have. A right to discuss or express the public employee's views regarding public employee representation, workplace issues, or the rights granted to the public employee in this Article 32, protected by the First Amendment already. Engage in protected concerted activity for the purpose of mutual aid or protection, protected by the First Amendment already. Fully participate in the political process while off-duty and not in uniform, protected already. Speaking with members of the public employer's governing body on terms and conditions of employment in any matter of public concern, protected already. Engaging in other political activities in the same manner as other citizens of Colorado without discrimination, intimidation, or retaliation, protected already. Organize, form, join, or assist an employee organization or refrain from organizing, forming, joining, or assisting. Members, what this does is it creates over in CDLE and other bureaucracy, arguably shortens, really does to me,
arguably shorten the statute of limitations for the time that an employee would have to make a complaint under the First Amendment. Unnecessary, confusing, and upsetting the balance that has been struck over the last 30-plus years concerning the rights of First Amendment rights of public employees. If you say, well, what's the big deal? If we have an existing set of course precedent and a legislature says, well, we've got to do something else, it is the tendency of the court to say, why? They must be trying to do something more. They must be trying to use a different balance for public employees in Colorado. And can you protect their right beyond what is wise, beyond what the court precedent has determined? Well, you could, and you may just have, and you may have caused a problem that you don't know anything about until it happens. But it is work for lawyers, I will say that. Nevertheless, I urge a no vote.
See no further discussion. The motion is the adoption of Senate Bill 111. Are there any no votes? Senators Simpson, Van Winkle, Will, Baisley, Pelton B., Rich, Liston, Gardner, Kirkmeyer, Smallwood, Minority Leader Lundin, Zenzinger. With a vote of 22 ayes, 12 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Bill 111 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Gonzalez, Sullivan, Marchman, Jaquez Lewis, Colker, Priola, Winter, Exum, Majority Leader Moreno. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 273?
Senate Bill 273, Senator Marchman and Representative Basenacre and McLaughlin concerning the inclusion of agricultural land in urban renewal areas.
Senator Marchman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 273 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Minority Senator Marchman.
Thank you. In 2010, legislators wrote a bipartisan bill to curb the abuse of putting ag land into URAs. I heard from these bipartisan sponsors of the legislation about a month ago that they request we clarify this subsection E now before it becomes a precedent. At the time, the bill sponsored added local consent to ag land being brought into a new URA with 3 narrow exceptions. The 3 narrow exceptions are brownfield, urban blight, and enclave. The main goal was to require approval of all taxing authorities consenting to the ag land being in a URA. At the time, the sponsors added a 5th subsection E clause to grandfather in any existing URAs that were in place at the time of the bill passing in 2010. The intention was to allow new URAs on ag land under one of the 4 circumstances and hold harmless existing URAs with ag land through the end of their TIF clocks, which all should end by 2035 at the latest. Subsection E was never intended to create new TIFs from the grandfathered ag land without going through the other 4 exceptions in perpetuity. The need to circumvent local taxing authorities is a new need. We have 13 years of success statewide in forming valuable public-private partnerships using this tool with local consent. I'm happy to work with folks to address this issue next session if it appears to be a statewide issue. But all the URAs that were mentioned on seconds on Friday are fine. They are not impacted in Erie, Dacono, Frederick, Firestone, neither Center, Hudson, Avon, Pagosa Springs. We are clarifying subsection E here and will work to deal with amendments of circumventing taxing authorities if they don't consent in the interim. I urge an aye vote.
Minority Leader Lundin.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I rise in opposition to Senate Bill 273. As we discussed on seconds, this bill has some policy challenges, but it's got an enormous principle challenge. I would start with the sublime. The sublime, of course, we find when our hearts connect with poetry to our reality. T.S. Eliot offered the following language in this conversation. Time present and time past are both perhaps present in time future, and time future contained in time past. There's a riddle for your brain. If all time is eternally present, all time is unredeemable. What might have been is an abstraction, remaining a perpetual possibility, only in a world of speculation. What might have been and what has been point to one end, which is always present. Footfalls echo in the memory down the passage which we did not take toward the door we never opened into the rose garden. T.S. Eliot. Wonderful thoughts about time, and the challenge of this bill, as amended, beyond the policy challenges which are worth engaging on, is the fact that it seeks to reach back and retroactively take a project that is underway off the table. And that project is fundamental to a community just north of here, to Loveland. What the bill as amended did, in committee it was amended to change was in one portion of the bill to is, and change submitted in another portion of the bill to approved. Those two little changes have the effect of undermining a substantial community supporting project. Now, the question before us is, are we really serious about making housing more affordable in Colorado or not? Are we serious about protecting the large section of the 1,200 homes that would be affected by this bill that are affordable housing, available and buildable, or not? 273 says not. I would argue that this is suboptimal as characterized public policy. It's bad for Colorado. It's designed to derail one specific real estate development project in Loveland. Or, if it's not designed to do that, it will have the effect of doing that. This project has put about $200 million in ancillary development, infrastructure, into the area. There are hundreds and hundreds of small commercial enterprises, mom and pop shops, strip centers, other commercial elements that are relying on the investment that is inherent in this particular project. And we take this off the table, we have a negative impact on those projects. I would also argue that this is going to have a negative impact, a substantially negative impact on affordable housing. Units in the project that this will have a disruptive effect to range with regard to their area median income from 45% of the area median income. Think about that. Somebody who's making less than half of the average area median income would be able to afford one of the homes, one of the rental properties being developed under this project. This particular developer home builder I should say, has developed tens of thousands of units in our communities And there's another more than 1,000, about 1,200 homes that would be affected by this as well. But lest you think that I'm in the tank for one specific builder, I'm not. There is a list of other communities that are in opposition to this as well. There are other URAs, urban renewal authorities, that say this bill would be disruptive and damaging to them. Just got a letter this morning from down in Trinidad, down in southern Colorado. Trinidad Urban Renewal Authority just learned of this legislation being rushed through the legislature. We oppose the bill. If passed, it will affect one of our major project areas that has been delayed by problems with the private sector. How about that? I'm always pounding on government for not getting it right. Sometimes private sector struggles to get it done in a timely manner as well. But the delays caused in this instance require that the retroactivity created by this bill not be present. So says the folks in Trinidad. Now I get back to my note here. Technology. Can't live with it. Can't keep it straight in front of you. Continuing with that letter. We are contemplating amending our current plan to accommodate new efforts in this important area of the community. This bill would disrupt the folks down in Trinidad from achieving that. This legislation appears to be aimed at crippling our ability to operate under current law with protections already available to counties and other taxing bodies. It harms most those smaller communities dealing with limited resources. So, I know one side of the aisle constantly believes that government is always the solution, that if we just run a bill, we can magically create affordable housing across Colorado. I'm here to tell you what you know deep in your mind already, and that is it takes dozens, hundreds, thousands of different elements working together in pursuit of a similar objective, in the same direction, all in the same hemisphere moving forward together. To get to the affordable housing development and building we need in Colorado, we need everybody putting their shoulder to the wheel. We don't need legislation like 273 that says 1,200 units, a large portion of them affordable. We don't want that. That is exactly why housing becomes so unaffordable in this state. The reality is we're taking off the table in a meaningful way a large number of affordable units, and we are sending a signal that says those who would build affordable housing in Colorado need not apply. Early this session, we sat down before the Chamber of Commerce in a big conversation about what the legislative session might look like. We sat down, R's and D's, together with the business providers, the business people of Colorado and from around the country that participate in business in Colorado. And it was raised, the idea, by those who develop the sorts of housing we need, those who build the sorts of businesses we need to make life affordable and attainable for the people of Colorado, that in fact, Colorado in many meaningful ways is worse than everybody holds up California as the boogeyman. California's doing it wrong. We are not Colorado. In fact, you heard in the executive's presentation in the State of the State address, we are not California. Colorado is not California. The reality is, when bills like this pass, sadly, it reinforces that fact. Colorado is not California. It's worse than California in terms of so many of the things we are choosing to do to make life less affordable, housing less attainable, and people's lives here less beneficial than they could be. I urge your careful consideration, and should you see my arguments as compelling, your no vote on Senate Bill 273. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Appreciate the opportunity to be able to get up and speak to this bill, even though I was not here on Friday and couldn't speak to the amendment that was trying to get onto this bill. So members, having been probably the only person in this room that was actually involved in the legislation in 2010, I have this to say. With regard to curbing the abuse, that's correct. But here's the deal. That's why we had E in its original form. And E in its original form, in 31-25-107, E in its original form, said the agricultural land was included so it could be exempted. As long as the agricultural land was included in an approved urban renewal plan prior to June 1st, 2010. This bill is defining and changing that exception that we put in place in 2010 because of a single project in Loveland that the Larimer County Commissioners don't like, apparently, and the mayor doesn't like. But the entire City Council of Loveland supports this project and they are opposed to the bill. They support. The entire Loveland City Council supports this bill, or supports this project, sorry, and opposes the bill. It is the Board of County Commissioners who oppose the project. And they're relying on D, which gives every taxing entity, you have to get every taxing entity to approve it. So if Larimer County says no, the project's a no-go. If we'd have left the law as it was written in 2010, after months and months of discussion, 2010 was like after 2008 and 2009 where we had discussions with regard to TIFs and urban renewals and agricultural land. In fact, I can still remember having the discussion with then Senator Randy Fisher from Fort Collins, who carried the bill. So if we would have left everything alone, we'd be fine. We didn't leave everything alone because Larimer County Commissioners and the mayor don't like the project. But the entire City Council for Loveland likes the project, and they oppose this bill. So the good news is, I heard the good senator from Loveland speak and said that she's willing to work with everyone next year. Well, heck, we don't need to wait a year. We don't need to wait a year to fix the problem that is being created by this bill. We had this settled in 2010. And here we are in 2023, coming up with a way to basically get rid of or not have happen a really good project. So let me just be really clear about this project because there's been a lot of misinformation about what this project is. It is actually part of an existing URA that existed before June 1st, 2010. It's 3,000 acres, has over 5,000 residents in it. The property that we're speaking to, the 150-acre parcel, it's not zoned agriculture. It is taxed agriculture because it is yet to be developed, but it's not zoned agriculture. It is zoned mixed use. It could be residential, it could be commercial, it could be multifamily. This development occurred in an area right next to or right around Highway 34 and I-25. They've been very successful in their development since 2004. They help to, they've integrated neighborhoods with recreation, shopping and dining, business opportunities. They have put in, and it's right next to a major work center, which is called the Medical Center of the Rockies, a hospital. This development in 2018, Centera is what it's called, became the first certified National Wildlife Federation community wildlife habitat in Colorado. In 2022, it was designated the state's first sustainable landscape community, recognizing Centera's dedication and commitment to water conservation and sustainability. The project that is before us, before the Loveland City Council, is about mixed use, it's about affordable housing, it's about over 1,100 homes. that will be brought to this area. 1,100 homes. And this developer, this is what he does with his development. This is how they fit into the community and provide for attainable and affordable housing. Their developments have added significant number of workforce units in the 80% to 100%, 120% AMI range. 82% of new for-sale units built between 2000 and 2022 are affordable to households under 120% of AMI, compared to 67% nationwide, region-wide. Represents an expansion of workforce units relative to the region. We're not talking just about Loveland being impacted here. We're talking about all of northern Colorado. This is an important project for workforce housing in all of northern Colorado. And the rental developments are generally similar in pricing to other apartments in the Loveland, northern Colorado area, but the overall average is on the low side of the spectrum at 77% AMI. Again, this is not an agricultural property. Yes, they still farm it to keep the weeds down. They pay a farmer to come in and mow and do whatever they need to do, but it's not zoned agriculture. The surrounding areas, northern Colorado, have greatly benefited by the URA with significant public infrastructure. Not just water and sewer, but transit hubs at Highway 34 and I-25 that were paid for by this developer. This URA has generated millions of dollars in the new revenues for the taxing entities. And regardless of what was said earlier, having sat on the Dacono Urban Renewal Authority and the Fort Lupton Urban Renewal Authority, I can tell you that those communities will be impacted by this change in the law. So will Frederick, so will Lamar, so will Sterling, and you heard about the new one that we got today, Trinidad. And as Trinidad said, the city of Trinidad said, this change in law that was settled in 2010, and believe me, it was a huge fight, this change in law will cripple smaller communities with limited resources. But more importantly, this bill is about bad public policy, and it's bad for Colorado. This is a developer, this is a Urban Renewal Authority that has done it right. They've brought in housing next to business opportunities and businesses and retail. They've created walkable communities. They've helped get a new hospital built in the area. They've put in transit. They have done everything right. This is when you talk about smart growth, this is the area that you go to. They've increased the taxes in the area. They have done everything right. Yet, because the Larimer County Commissioners and the mayor of Loveland are opposed to the development, we came in with a new law. We changed the law that was fought so hard for to make it so it can't happen. And it will jeopardize developments throughout other parts of this state. I don't really think that's funny. I don't think that's something we should be trying to do, especially when we've had numerous bills here that try to take over local control, that purport to build more affordable housing. Yet when we have the opportunity to develop that, because of a mayor and a county commission, because we come in and we change the law from 2010, that has been working, and it can continue to work without this amendment.
Senator Kirkmeyer, would you like to go into your next 10 minutes?
Not at this time. Thank you, Mr. President. I urge a no vote on this bill. Let's not set us back.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion is the adoption of Senate Bill 273. Are there any no votes? Senators Simpson, Will, Van Winkle, Baisley, Liston, Gardner, Hanson, Pelton B, Rich, Kirkmeyer, Smallwood, Minority Leader Lundin, Malika, Zenzinger. With a vote of 20 ayes, 14 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Bill 273 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Jaquez Lewis, Cutter,
Got it. I'll prompt her to make sure she comes up.
please add the President. Senator Henriksen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wish to be added as a co-sponsor on House Bill 1196.
Senator Henriksen will be recorded as a co-sponsor on House Bill 1196. Senator Janal.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor on Senate Bill 268.
Senator Janal will be added as a co-sponsor on Senate Bill 268. The Senate will stand in a senatorial 5. Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate take up the following bills on special orders second reading at the hour of 12 p.m. Senate Bill 264, 260, 211, 145, 195, and 270. Colleagues, all of these Senate bills are on your general orders calendar for tomorrow, and a special orders calendar is being distributed to your desks as we speak.
The motion is that the Senate take up Senate Bills 264, 260, 211, 145, 195, and 270 on special orders at the hour of 12 noon today. This does require a 2/3 vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. That motion is adopted. The Senate will take up Senate Bills 264, 260, 211, 145, 195, and 270 on special orders at the hour of 12 p.m. Special orders, second reading of bills. Senator Henriksen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of special orders, second reading of bills.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. The Senate will resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of the special orders, second reading of bills. And Senator Henriksen will take the chair. Really settled in this morning.
The committee will come to order and the court rule is relaxed for all y'all. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 264?
Senate Bill 264, Senators Rodriguez and Gardner, Representative Lynch, concerning the ability of certain alcohol beverage license holders to participate in festivals for alcohol beverage retail activity.
Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 264 in the Business, Labor, and Technology Report.
To the committee report.
Thank you. In the committee, we did an amendment that moved the application timeframe from 10 days to 30 days to give the liquor enforcement and local governments more time to review the permit application, make the nine permits pulled part of the total 52 events eligible to participate in, modified the fee structure to help liquor enforcement enforce and administer festivals, allows enforcement to adjust accordingly after 1 year, and it moves the festival permit structure to January 1st every year starting 2024 for clarity and continuity.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the adoption of the Business, Labor, and Technology Committee report. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the BLT committee report is adopted. To the bill, Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hopefully there's an amendment at the desk.
There is an amendment at the desk. Ms. Cole, please read Amendment L007. Senator Gardner.
Amendment
Thank you,
L007.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Gardner.
I move L007.
Is there any discussion on L007? Seeing none, the motion is the adoption of L007. All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and L007 is adopted. To the bill. Senator Gardner.
Thank you. We urge and I vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 264. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 264 is adopted. Ms. Cole, please read the title to Senate Bill 260.
Senate Bill 260, Senator Mullica, concerning access to publicly funded vaccines.
Senator Mullica.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 260 and the Health and Human Services Committee report.
To the committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you want to come up? We ran an amendment in Health and Human Services Committee just to make sure that all the language was correct for CDPHE so that this could properly be done, and I ask for a yes on the Health and Human Services Committee report.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the adoption of the Health and Human Services Committee report. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Health and Human Services Committee report is adopted. To the bill. Senator Mulligan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Member Senate Bill 260 will codify a public health order, making sure that providers can't charge for vaccines that they receive for free, increasing access to vaccines. We were able to see the good work during the pandemic that this public health order had, and we want to continue that work and make sure that our communities are protected and safe from vaccine-preventable diseases. I ask for a yes vote on Senate Bill 260.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 260. All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 260 is adopted. Ms. Cole, will you please read the title to Senate Bill 211?
Senate Bill 211, Senators Daniel Sena Moreno, Representative McLaughlin, and Velasco, concerning adopting federal regulations to the Indian Child Welfare Act of 1978 as state law.
Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 211 and the State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee report.
To the committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the committee, we simply added some language that specifies which version of the Indian Child Welfare Act we're talking about, and that's the one that's in effect as of February 9th, 2003.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion is the adoption of the State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee report. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee report is adopted. To the bill.
Are you sure? All right.
Senator Danielson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, colleagues. And I want to thank my colleague, the good senator from Commerce City, the majority leader, for sponsoring this measure with me and taking an interest. I just wanted to say a few words because it is a really important measure to our Indigenous friends and neighbors all across the state, and is a priority bill for the community, including both of the tribal councils of the Southern Ute Indian Tribe and the Ute Mountain Ute. Basically, back in 1978, the federal government passed the Indian Child Welfare Act as a response to some of the really detrimental policies and actions taken by governments at the state level and the federal level for a long time when it came to removing Native children from their families, placing them with non-Native families, and basically disrupting, discouraging, and removing their cultural ties, their language, their regalia, any familial ties back to the tribe that they should have been placed with or maintained that connection with. This goes back to the boarding school policies of the past that only really, those policies formally ended in a couple decades back, but really folks come to us to tell us that those policies are still very much in place in terms of how families experience these kinds of trauma. And so with this act, it respects the right of Native families to prioritize the placement of children within the tribal community, et cetera. It really respects the culture and those strong ties that the kids and their families have, and we need to uphold the ruling. I also just wanted to, uphold the federal law. I also wanted to say that in committee we heard from a lot of community members who stayed a really long time that day to testify, to let us know how important this particular measure is and that its passage is critical for them. A few of them described what had happened to them, and in the hopes of avoiding this kind of thing, making sure that the state of Colorado embraces the federal law, no matter what happens at the Supreme Court level, and protects the families across the state that we do have an obligation to support, and for a community that we have a great deal of respect for in order to help them thrive and continue on the path that they see fit. We need to pass this bill. So, members, in case you weren't able to listen to the hearing or meet with folks prior to today's vote, know that this is a real priority for, again, both of the tribes who were just here on Friday during Ute Day. They care very deeply about this. It is very important and critical to them for the kids, for the families, for the tribes, and also for tribal sovereignty in general, which is something that we in the General Assembly have a duty, in my opinion, to respect, acknowledge, and uphold. So for all of the families we heard from, for all of the reasons that the Majority Leader and I have described, I urge an aye vote on this measure. And I really thank you for your time today.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is adoption of Senate Bill 211. All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 211 is adopted. Ms. Cole, will you please read the title to Senate Bill 145?
Senate Bill 145, Senator Danielson and Cutter, Representative Story, concerning the creation of a special license plate to commemorate the Stegosaurus as the Colorado state fossil.
Senator Danielson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, colleagues, for just a few seconds to get my co-prime sponsor and myself together here. I move Senate Bill 145 and the Appropriations Committee report.
To the committee report.
I urge an aye vote on the report.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes clearly have it, and the Appropriations Committee report is adopted. To the bill, Senator Cutter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this bill is pretty exciting. The license plate is very colorful, and kids all over have been looking forward to having a dino license plate. And we are fortunate to have the Dinosaur Ridge in my district, and this will help support their efforts. So I urge an aye vote today.
Senator Danielson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And folks, I know this might seem like a small measure to create a license plate, but I used to represent a Dinosaur Ridge before redistricting in the election this fall. And it's something that we're very proud of, and that is quite a draw for a lot of people across Colorado and other states when they visit our city. It's really close to downtown Denver, et cetera. And so they called me up in the interim and said, we'd like your assistance in an effort. And I said, you got it. Now what is it? And they said, well, we'd like to draw attention to the state fossil, to our efforts as Dinosaur Ridge, to the prehistoric education that we think is really critical to young people and older people alike. And to do that, we've gathered thousands of signatures, and we would like to have a license plate. And I said, that sounds like a really positive effort, a really good thing, that quite frankly, this legislature can use some more lighthearted policies, but it's important nonetheless. And we've had a lot of fun with this leading into today, especially since I have a 5-year-old daughter. And as you know, between my 5-year-old daughter and my young nephew over Easter, dinosaurs, believe me, are very central in a lot of people's lives. And again, it's a good thing, it's a positive thing. So when we toss out some fun facts about our state fossil, did you know, Mr. Chair, that this giant was 30 feet long and 14 feet tall and weighed 30,000 pounds? For example, that the first fossils that we found of the Stegosaurus were found right here in Colorado in 1876 on a hogback near Morrison, which definitely became known as Dinosaur Ridge. Since then, Dinosaur Ridge has become one of the most famous dinosaur fossil sites, and new fossils and dinosaur tracks continue to be found every day on the ridge. We've learned lots of other fun facts about our state fossil. We learned that when they first discovered it, they thought that it looked more like a turtle, and thus called it Stegosaurus, which means roofed lizard. Yes. Although we've found out since then that the spikes were upright and, created that really distinctive form. Although it had a brain the size of a walnut, it had 4 long spikes on its tail that it could swing with great force. And thanks to Gary Larson, and some of you in the chamber are old enough to remember The Far Side, it's now known as the Thagomizer, which you should Google that cartoon because it's pretty funny. But it is actually now known as the technical term for the spikes on the tail. Look, it's a neat dinosaur. Kids love it. It brings an awareness to the prehistoric education that we should be providing our state. The folks at Dinosaur Ridge worked real hard. We've had a lot of fun getting where we're to this point. As their mission is to educate the public about natural resources at the Dinosaur Ridge and protect the fossil tracks and bones that are still embedded in the rock. I really appreciate them coming to us and my fellow co-sponsors from Jefferson County and creating the license plate that we can take pride in protecting Colorado's fossil and recognizing the Stegosaurus as a state fossil. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Bridges.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was being a bit of a grump about this license plate when I first heard about it, and I thought about it, and I have to say, of all the bills we are passing this year, I think it is likely this one will bring the most joy to the people of Colorado. Maybe it won't provide them health care or education, but given all the facts that we just heard, the Thagomizer is technically what that spiky bit on the end of the tail is called by the scientific community. I think we will learn some things on this. Now, though, am looking forward to future sessions where we pass a license plate for the official state folk dance, the square dance, where we have the official state tree license plate, the Colorado Blue Spruce, and of course, one day I'm looking forward to a plate that is just entirely covered by the Colorado State tartan. But this year, today, please vote yes on this bill.
The motion before Senator Gonzalez. There is an amendment at the desk. Will Ms. Cole please read Amendment L17?
Amendment L017 by Senator Gonzalez.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L017 to this bill, and I will read it at length. What this amendment would do is amend the printed bill, page 2, after line 1, and insert the following. Section 1, short title. The short title of this act is the GOP is a Stegosaurus Fossil Act. And renumber the succeeding sections accordingly. I know. And so for that reason, I ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the adoption of Amendment L17. A division. I'm not sure I heard a call for division. So the motion is the adoption. All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. Senator Gonzalez.
I withdraw regretfully L17, but it brought me great joy. Thank you all, colleagues.
Senator Bridges.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
L17 is withdrawn.
I had thought about running an amendment declaring Larry Liston Colorado State fossil instead, but I like this one as well. This is good. I know.
As fun as it may be at the moment, we're not going to refer to members of the Senate by name. Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in support of Senate Bill 145. It did dawn on me that this bill will probably subtly undermine some of the good work I've done on license plate bills, and the fact that people will not want to buy those and will flock towards this one. So, but good job, sponsors.
The motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 145. All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 145 is adopted. Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 195 lay over until tomorrow, April 18th.
The motion is to lay over Senate Bill 195 until tomorrow, Tuesday, April 18th. All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 195 is laid over. Ms. Cole, will you please read Senate Bill 270?
Senate Bill 270, Senators Roberts and Simpson, Representative McCormick, concerning protections that restore the environmental health of natural stream systems without administration.
Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 270 and the Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee report.
To the committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In committee, we made some pretty significant amendments that scaled this bill back to minor stream restoration projects as defined by the bill. It made a few other technical changes and added a petition clause. I'd ask for an aye vote on the committee report.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion is the adoption of the Ag and Natural Resources Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee report is adopted. To the bill, Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, I'm very excited to be here with the good senator from Alamosa to present Senate Bill 270. This is a bill that will help incentivize and support stream restoration projects in Colorado. These projects are incredibly important for our streams, our rivers, and our overall watershed and environmental health. There's been some great work and some great projects already undertaken in Colorado, but this bill streamlines the process for these minor projects and will allow us as well to access pretty historic federal funding that's available for water infrastructure projects. We all know we need to do everything we can to protect our streams and our water and our watersheds, and this is an important tool to do that. And with that, I'd ask for an aye vote.
Senator Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Likewise, I encourage an aye vote on Senate Bill 270. Lots of work in this space and trying to strike the right balance between the benefits from stream restoration projects and impacts to water right holders across the state. Had good debate last Thursday till late in the night, almost to midnight last week on the policy. I think we came to a really good space, and also got a text this morning. Colorado Water Congress, State Affairs Committee voted in support of the bill. That's a major milestone in the water world to be able to get their support. That's made up of lots of stakeholders across the state, ag interest, municipal interest, environmental interest, recreational interest. So a real milestone to gain their support. So would appreciate support of 270.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion is the adoption of Senate Bill 270. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 270 is adopted. Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
The motion is for the committee to rise and report. All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes, and the committee will rise and report.
Senate will come to order. Senator Henriksen.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has met and had a number of bills under consideration. Will Ms. Cole please read the report?
Mr. President, your committee of the whole begs leave to report it has had under consideration the following attached bills, being the second reading thereof, and makes the following recommendations thereon. Senate Bill 264 is amended. Senate Bill 260 is amended. Senate Bill 211 is amended. Senate Bill 145 is amended. Senate Bill 270 as amended, passed on second reading and ordered engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 195 laid over until April 18, 2023, and retaining its place on the calendar.
Senator Henriksen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of the committee of the whole report.
The motion is the adoption of the committee of the whole report. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 1 excused, the committee of the whole report is adopted. Senate Bill 264 is amended, 260 is amended, 211 is amended, 145 is amended, 270 is amended, passed in second reading and ordered engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 195 is laid over until 4/18/2023 and retaining its place on the calendar. Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the general orders second reading calendar lay over until tomorrow, Tuesday, April 18th.
The motion is lay over the general order second reading of the bill's calendar until tomorrow, Tuesday, April 18th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and we will lay over the general order second reading of the bill's calendar until tomorrow, Tuesday, April 18th. Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Joint Resolution 1020 lay over until April 26th.
The motion is lay over House Joint Resolution 1020 until April 26, 2023. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and House Joint Resolution 1020 will be laid over until April 26, 2023. Consideration of House amendments to Senate bills. Will the clerk please read the title of Senate Bill 144?
Senate Bill 144, Senator Janal, Representative, may be concerning prescription drugs for the treatment of chronic pain.
Senator Janal.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate concur with the House amendments to Senate Bill 144.
Is there any discussion? Senator Janal.
Thank you, Mr. President. The House amendment clarified that the Colorado Medical Board and the State Board of Nursing retain their current rulemaking and licensing powers and duties that already exist in statute. The amendment simply re-clarifies and clarifies, again, the intent of the bill. I ask for an aye vote.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, the motions that the Senate concur with House amendments to Senate Bill 144. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 1 excused, the motion is adopted. Senator Janal.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the repassage of Senate Bill 144.
The motion is repassage of Senate Bill 144. Are there any no votes? Senators Van Winkle, with a vote of 33 ayes, 1 no, 0 absent, and 1 excused, Senate Bill 144 is repassed. Co-sponsors. Introduction of bills.
Senate Bill 285, Senators Priola and Hansen, Representative McCormick, concerning energy and carbon management regulation in Colorado and in connection therewith. Senate Bill 285, Senators Priola and Hansen, Representative McCormick, concerning energy and carbon management regulation in Colorado and in connection therewith, changing the name of the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission to the Energy and Carbon Management Commission and broadening the Commission's regulatory authority to include the regulation of certain geothermal resource operations and intrastate underground natural gas storage facilities.
Agriculture and Natural Resources.
House Bill 1234, Representatives Brown and Soper, Senators Roberts and Will, concerning the streamlined solar permitting and inspection grant program and in connection therewith, making an appropriation.
Transportation and Energy. Senator 05. Announcements. Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, we are going to change up the calendar a little bit in Judiciary Committee for this afternoon, so listen closely, because the bills that we will be hearing will not be in the order that they appear in your calendars. We are going to be hearing at 1:30 this afternoon in the Old Supreme Court the following bills in the following order. We're going to hear 1108 and 194 for action only. We're going to hear 1100 and 1042, the full hearings with witnesses on both of those policies, and then we will hear 164. We'll be laying over 1192 and 158 to Wednesday's committee. I'm going to repeat that again just so y'all hear clearly. We're going to hear on the following order in Judiciary Committee, 1108 and 194 for action only, and then 1100 and 1042, the full hearings for both of those policies, followed by Senate Bill 164. And then we will lay over 1192 and 158 to Wednesday's committee hearing. See y'all at 1:30.
Senator Buckner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Education Committee will meet in room 357 at 1:30. We have some appointments, and then we will be hearing House Bill 1213, 1235, and 1246. Thank you.
Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. President. Announcement for the Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee. We will be adding Senate Bill 285 to the calendar for this Wednesday in the Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee, and this will be reflected on the printed calendar later today.
Members, I have an announcement. We will be adding Senate Bill 273 to the calendar for this Thursday in the State Vet and Military Affairs. This will also be reflected on the printed calendar. Any additional announcements? Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate recess until 1 p.m. today. Colleagues, you do not need to return. We'll just be reading bills across the desk later.
You heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Senate will adjourn until 9 a.m. Tuesday, April 18, 2023. Recess until 1 p.m. today.